Welcome to the LPP podcast, and thanks for watching this video or tuning in to our whatever podcast network you're tuning into if you're listening to audio only. My name is Zach Rhodes. I'm with my colleague, Dr. Stanton Peel, and we are two people who work for the Life Process Program, which is an online anti-addiction sort of program, trying to help people map on to the kind of lifestyle that they want without going through something like recovery per se. To learn more about addiction and the Life Process Program, go to lifeprocessprogram.com. Again, I'm Zach Rhodes, and I'm with the creator of the Life Process Program, Dr. Stanton Peel. Stanton, how you doing?
Good. And I want to mention that you're one of the coaches, along with we have esteemed colleagues, Ann Earl, Dolores, who we call Dee, a former smart recovery organizer. And why I value all of you coaches is because you have a certain humanity based on your own experience and your own ability to relate to people. I mean, you're all great coaches by my lights because you can empathize with people, you don't judge people, you can get into their life space. And in regards to that, I created the Life Process Program, but I don't generally do individual coaching. And occasionally people call me up outside of the Life Process Program based on my books and, knowledge they have about me. And they want to consult with me personally. And they come, as I said, outside of the Life Process Program framework. And you deal with clients because it's always educational. Hopefully you're helping people. They want something. And hopefully you're learning because, you're out in the world with people, and you're partly of what you're learning is, well, what are people facing out there? What's on their minds? Mm-hmm. And so a man contacts me one way or another, and he says he's read one of my books, and he's got several main questions, and he'd like to ask them to me. And he's a successful attorney, and so we set up a online meeting. And when people, it always makes me nervous when people say, oh, I've got some questions, because am I really going to be able to answer a specific question better than what I've already tried to do through my writing? So the first question he asked is, am I addicted to marijuana, sex, and love? Which sort of asks, partly it's asking the question, well, can a person be addicted to those things? And, what I tend to do in situations like that is to throw the question back to them. And then I asked, what do you think my answer is? And he gave, smart man, he gave my answer. He said, well, when you become involved in something that's very detrimental to your life and so on and so forth, that's how he defined addiction. And then I said, well, do you think you're addicted? You tell me. That's what we're going to talk about. And then he said, a very insightful man, well, I don't know if each of these things is addictive in the sense of what you think of as addiction totally taking over your life, but I think they can be harmful along a scale. And these have been harmful to my life. And I say, so far, you're batting 100. And then he asked me a question. Well, can I cut back on any of these things? These things, including marijuana, love, and sex. He had been divorced, and the divorce had to do with the fact that he was having illicit relationships outside the marriage. How do you answer people when they ask you a question like that? Or can I cut back from whatever it is I'm doing too much of?
Well, I do something similar to what you do. I do with an added kind of disarming feature of saying, uh, I'll let you know what I think, but since I don't know you, tell me what you've been thinking about that. You probably, since you asked the question, have been stewing it over. So what do you have so far? And so that's like, they know they'll get some answer. I'm not avoiding the question, but also let's get your insights and work together.
That's kind of 100% my answer. I say, I just met you, in our interaction. You've been thinking about this and you've been doing it and trying it. And then, of course, there's the add-on, something we've discussed. You're not going to abstain, generally speaking, from certain addictions. You're probably not going to abstain from love and sex. Some people try. You're not going to abstain from food. You're not going to abstain from shopping. And so the very fact that we have a broader approach casts those questions into a different framework. And once again, he knew where we were coming from in all of this. As I say, some people can cut back, but I don't know if you can. Let's talk about you doing that. And then he gives his opinion, which is that he has to change his life dramatically to reunite with his ex-wife. That's the thing he's most specifically concerned about, although he's also concerned about marijuana. And they've had a long-term, they're divorced now. They have a child in common. They live apart. They only deal around business things. And he doesn't have smooth interactions with her. They're respectful, but every time they get in a more intimate setting, like around a birthday party or something, things go south. And so, once again, I'm not going to say, I think you can or cannot get together with this woman, but it does raise a funny question.
Yeah.
Is it harder? I say, well, you're not going to abstain from sex and love, but when you break up with marijuana doesn't care. If you're involved with a woman and there's been some kind of a negative interaction where she wants things from you and you have a way of expressing your needs to each other, which sets the other one off, that's actually a tougher addiction to quit. So the question is, there's two questions at least here. Can you ever have a constructive relationship with her, or a constructive intimate relationship? He's hoping she's the mother of his child. By the way, I want to take one step back. He says some negative things about himself, which is very customary in interactions like that. He's a very accomplished attorney, and he's the primary caregiver to his son. And he has a really good relationship with his son, and his son is aware of his marijuana use. And at one point I say, could you discuss, you have a lot to be, let's focus a little bit on your resources and your assets. You're an extremely successful professional. You have a really good relationship with your son. You seem to have some good skills, analytic skills, dealing with the world. First of all, that reflects on the question of whether you're addicted to marijuana. And second of all, you do have a platform on which to build. And then I made the specific suggestion, possibility. His son actually said to him, Dad, I know you go outside and smoke marijuana. You don't have to hide that from me. I said, is your son one of the people you might discuss some of these questions with? Because what you and I realize is that in the Life Process program, no matter how much you interact with them, and I'm not going to interact much probably with him, they've got ongoing relationships that are much more important in terms of sustaining their behavior. So first of all, and then I said, do you feel, leaving aside this particular woman, that you can have an intimate relationship? And then he gave a quite elaborate description of what it would be like for him to have such a relationship. He wouldn't force, he wouldn't express everything about his background, some of the problems he's had up until now. He would, have some frank discussions, but he would take his time with that before really becoming intimate with the person. I say, well, you've done quite a lot of thinking. You have a plan, I said, about what it would be like for you to have a non-addictive relationship, intimate relationship. There's a big question about whether you're going to have this with your wife, and I'm not going to answer that. But maybe I'll be a little bit more directive than the marijuana question. You've been involved with your ex-wife over a period of a lot of years, and you've described the same problems reoccurring over all that time. It suggests, if not pessimism, a little bit of caution.
Right.
In imagining how that'll go.
He's kind of saying, this is the thing I have with my wife right now is not my ideal relationship. I would like something more. And kind of asking you, kind of saying to you, I've been running this analysis. What do you think, Dr. Peel? Is it worth sticking around with this person who is maybe I'm not going to build a totally fulfilled relationship with? Or should I, is it a risk to junk it and try to look for something that is more fulfilling? And you're saying, it sounds like you have your questions already and your suspicions and your cautionaries.
And you're going in a direction that's really important. And I wonder how, I know you encounter this. He's already been in therapy. He's currently in therapy. He's currently in therapy with the 12-step oriented, trauma-oriented person. He's looking at his life in 12 steps and trauma. And in contacting me, what's he saying, really? And then
can you talk me out of this? Yeah.
Or he's people are saying, first of all, one thing I learned in interactions like this is what I already sort of knew, how widespread 12-step therapy and trauma therapy are. He's already got a whole rendition of his life in terms of his traumas, his wife's traumas. His therapist isn't specifically an AA person, but he thinks totally in a recovery mode. I know this is out there, and we're counter-marketing against that.
I'm going to change my answer. What he's saying is, I'm going to the therapy and doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing and that they're telling me to do because they're telling me stuff that it's supposedly the right stuff. But then I read your stuff, your books, Dr. Peel, and you're saying like true stuff. So can you help me out with some of the true stuff I'm not getting from all the help I'm getting? Yes, make a counterpoint.
I've been doing this therapy. I was in 12-step therapy with my wife for years. And I don't believe it. It doesn't matter. He's a hard-nosed lawyer who has a good relationship with his son. He's got good fundamental intellectual, personal skills. And it's been like he's pushing uphill for years. A, it's not working. And B, he's sort of sitting there half or more of the time saying, bullshit. What they're saying, I don't believe that. I believe I have changed my life. I don't believe I have some biological genetic predisposition to marijuana or any of that. And partly he's calling me up to sort of say, tell me that what they're saying isn't true. Validate me.
Validate me, exactly. Tell me I'm not crazy for thinking that stuff's not true, right?
Which is a funny job to have. And this is why what I'm doing is a little bit different than coaching. Because for him to rebuild his life, I'm not going to use the word arduous process, but that's a somewhat involved, detailed process. Here, he's sort of, the questions he's asking are stamp of approval questions. Can people cut back on marijuana? Can they avoid sex addictions in relationships? How do they go about doing that in general, in a larger picture? Can they change the kind of person they are in relationship to some substances and some people? Are these things possible? And he's dialed me up because he basically already knows that on his part, and he knows that that's what I believe. And he wants my reinforcement that he can do that's possible. And so he asked me names of some other books of mine, and he asked me about the Life Process program. And, he's a successful professional, but, it's arduous to pay the kind of fee I charge on a regular basis. And so I'm saying, the Life Process program is a great way for you to go. It's a tenth of what I'm charging you. The people, the coaches are infinitely sympathetic. They're not infinitely sympathetic and patient. I mean, they're going to want you to move along, but they have the kind of attitude and determination and ability to work patiently with you to get, to where you have to go. So let me just close this section and ask you another impossible question for which there's no right answer. Why are there people out there spending years in a therapy that they don't believe in and they don't think is working for them and they don't even really believe in it?
There's a remedy for it, ostensibly. And so, okay, I'll do the remedy for it thing. Same reason why people are up, antioxidants and things like that for Alzheimer's, even though they do nothing, show no support. And why would people pitch that? Why would people build a story around themselves, even though they don't believe in it? Well, everyone else is doing it. Everyone else does it who says that that's what you should do when you have an issue. So I guess I'll throw my weight behind this thing. And dying a social death of there's no one else to lean on or talk to and, chastise for having a problem and not trying to take these steps to fix it is sometimes more painful than just trying to figure out what's true. And we certainly don't, as a culture, don't give people a lot of avenues for finding out what's true without being, without a barbed response at them. What's your answer?
Well, it's generally along the same lines. It's sort of like, I have an addiction problem. This is what you do. Boom.
Yeah. Right.
There's a brilliant novelist. I've read all of her novels, called Anne Pichette. She wrote a book called Truth and Beauty, I think. She had a very close relationship with a woman who died. The woman had a cancer of her mouth early on in life, and it directed her whole existence with some negatives, but she's highly, highly talented. And she wrote a bestseller before Anne Pichette wrote a bestseller called something like Face. Lucy Greeley was her name. And they were great, 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 great friends. And Lucy Greeley shot up heroin. And at one point, Anne Pichette and other friends and family did an intervention. And they sent her to some fancy 12-step program in Connecticut.
Mm.
And Lucy Greeley quit almost instantly. And she said, well, it's bullshit. I'm going to turn myself over to a higher power. That's because these are brilliant women. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And Anne Pichette's answer, Anne Pichette's a genius. She writes genius novels about human motivation. And Anne Pichette's answer was, well, that's the way they do it. That's addiction treatment. And she doesn't go down to the brass roots and start saying, Does this make sense? I mean,
Isn't that bullshit? Right.
it's almost as though she's thinking, oh, I need brain surgery. I'll go to a brain surgery at NYU or wherever.
Right.
I'm not going to start arguing with him.
That's the thing
But
you do.
Lucy really was a little more rebellious, and she said, I one thing I know about life, I believe she was brought up Catholic, and she rejected that as I'm not going to turn myself over to a higher power and everything's going to be all right. That much I know, that's not my solution.
Do you read any Orwell? You must have.
In my day, I did. When I'm old. We passed 1984, and then I thought, oh my God, whatever happened?
So Animal Farm, I don't know if you remember any of the archetypes. Baxter was the horse who worked himself literally to death because that's just what he felt like he was supposed to do. And I work with colleagues. I'm not really a big union guy when it comes to my privileged place and what people are asking for. But I am in a way because I watch people around me who are basically agreeable, and then they're asked to do far more than their job entails. And when somebody wants to ask for something like a lunch break, for God's sakes, or being able to take some sick time when they have pneumonia, even though they don't have sick days, things like that,
Uncle
they don't. What's that?
Uncle Ozzy did that job. He was the shop steward.
Oh, is that right? So. Well, I'm watching people do that and think they're doing stuff that they don't believe in, even though they know it's harming them. And it's not even functional for a workplace because they don't want to seem disagreeable. Nobody wants to be in the position to, when you act or do something, even if it's the right thing for you, for others, true in general, that they're disagreeable. So it's a bad position.
We're going beyond that to say, here's a guy whose life is on the line.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. True.
I mean, he's in his 40s. Am I going to have an intimate relationship? Am I going to get all, how am I going to deal with drugs? And he's doing something that he doesn't think works. It's even worse. You know what I mean? He's taking his time and money.
Right.
And so I guess how we'll end this session is, if you're sitting there, if you've ever been in a 12-step, I knew a woman who was very, very funny. She would turn to the person next to her at AA meeting and say, we're never going to get this time back in our life. But she's there because, well, where else are you going to be if you're trying to deal with whatever? You know what I mean? Even though she's saying, is this bull crap we're sitting through for hours? Like we couldn't do something better? And we're telling people, if you have that instinct, dwell on it a bit, because you're hearing something true from yourself, and there are alternatives.
So you're not a big, what do they call them now? Mutual aid group kind of a guy for addiction. But it's almost like if we were going to create a group, it would have to be more broad, like Associates Against Bullshit group, that kind of, like, in general, how do you have a conversation with somebody who is also just trying to figure out what's true and actually where do I go? How do you have a conversation that lets you be your own person?
One of our colleagues, Dee Cloward, she does run a discussion group for members of LPP,
right?
So there are benefits, but it's very much, it's secondary to the basic processes that you're undergoing on your own.
Right. And by the way, she does. I didn't mean to exclude that part of our program. Everyone who was a client of mine who also has been to those groups finds it incredibly beneficial. Even people who say, I'm not like a group person, because you go there and it's other people who have all sorts of different issues. And they're just trying to say, can we talk about what it's like to kind of find your own way? And maybe I can bounce some ideas off of you. That's helpful. And that's what I'm saying. It's almost like you got to go even broader.
You and I, you've tried AA. You've been to AA. I've spent some time in moderation management meetings. I know some of the organizers. A group process centered around a shared difficulty. To me, we do groups. The Life Process Program emphasizes group membership, but we ask the question, if you want to be with people, if you want to learn about leading a non-addicted lifestyle, you could just hang out with people or find people who drink moderately or who don't go to bars or just like clean up parks on the week. You can find groups like that don't have a big sign out, neon sign, no addiction. You could just have a life group.
Yeah. I mean, I don't get to have conversations like this. I like having conversations like this with you and with other people I talk to about, and it's almost like there's not a great format for it. So I've created this one, but not everybody has that. I understand why people are drawn to something like AA, like a moth to a light. It does capture it. There's something social. Maybe I can make something of it, even though, right, as you say, it's sort of.
And I throw one last thing in before we say goodbye.
Sure.
Don't be afraid to raise meaningful questions with people you hang out with. You know what I mean? I'm a little bit marked by that. It's sort of like I don't have a version of light conversation.
Right.
If I'm sitting around at Thanksgiving, I'll say, "Oh, how many people have quit smoking?" Or let's talk about our relationship with our fathers. I mean, I like a little meat on my topics. I don't want to talk about like New York real estate.
I like that about you. It's because it's either that or you tune out, and I think you're allergic to tuning out. You like to be tuned in.
So that's the goal. And so this has been a little sachet in life process program outside of the confines of the life process program. People who aren't in the life process program looking in, and how you might consider also what they could gain from it and why they want to do it in your own framework.
Love it. Thank you so much. And thanks for the case study, Stanton. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Good to see you, Zach.